Welcome back to this week's episode of the Campfire Series podcast. This is Overtime, where we're talking a little bit about sports this week. I'm your host, Logan Safarenko. Be sure to check us out on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts or Google Play, or I don't even know how the Android stuff works. But today we have a very special guest joining us. He is the voice of the Los Angeles Dodgers, sports broadcaster and sports personality, Joe Davis. So you are the play-by-play broadcaster for the Los Angeles Dodgers. How did you get involved with doing that? Did you work for Spectrum before? Did they come after you? Like, how did that happen?
So I did 4 years of minor league baseball, and then I did 2 years at ESPN, and then moved to Fox. And early on into my time in Fox, we heard from the Dodgers for the first time that they were interested in maybe me being the guy to follow Vin. And so that would have been 2015. Signed on with them late 2015 to start the 2016 season, and did the 1 year where it was just road games while Vin was doing home games, and then I've done all the games for the last 3 years now.
What's that like? That energy, shadowing or following Vin Scully's footsteps?
It's amazing. It's you can look at it and say, wow, what a burden, and how difficult that's going to be. But I try not to look at it that way. I try to look at it more as a responsibility to follow the greatest ever to do it. And for me, it was not. It didn't make the potential job, when I was looking at it, as overly daunting. It made it what made it so special, really, for me was who had been in that chair for so long, and the opportunity to be the guy to follow him was one that I looked at and embraced, and said, I'm following him. I'm not replacing him. And I think once you kind of make that decision in your mind, it becomes much more doable.
Is there also a like you're it's the Dodgers is a iconic franchise, and especially when you took over for Vin, the Dodgers they've been consistent in the postseason. They've been really good. Has that
Mhm.
added to like the pressure and responsibility like the franchise of the Dodgers?
Yeah, I think that adds to both those things, just the iconic brand. The fact that they've been so good since I took over has been one of the key reasons that I think I'm still here, and that people have run me out of town, not being the guy or not being Vin. Had that team lost 100 games a year over the first few seasons I was here, they might have said, "Get this guy out of here." But the team's won 100 games a year, and so I've been delivering mostly good news, and people like to hear good news.
So with that, you kind of get to be a little fan because you're following them the whole season when they're winning, you know, 100 games. But there's also times where you're calling, national television on, FS1, and sometimes you get Dodger games. How do you not be biased?
It's not as difficult as you might think. There are little things that, so like the excitement level is not that difficult. There are little things, though. Like, for example, I would not call Kenley Jansen Kenley on a national broadcast, but that's something that I have to like make sure I'm thinking in my head that I'm differentiating between the two formats, the local broadcast and the national one. So there are like little things that I would do on a Dodger broadcast that I wouldn't on a national broadcast that I have to keep in mind. But as far as playing it down the middle and being objective, that's not that difficult. I think it just kind of comes with trying to be a professional.
And I'm sure it didn't add any level of difficulty when you called the Braves Dodgers series. I think it was a year ago. That wasn't hard for you at all when it comes to not being biased.
It was hard is not the word, tricky, like it just a little cumbersome, a little awkward. What would have been hard, I think, would be if the Dodgers got beat. I think that would have been hard to have people hear me, not hard to do, but hard to face the backlash of people hearing me get excited about the Braves upsetting the Dodgers had that happen. I mean, there wasn't much that went right for the Braves in the series, but the little bit that did, uh, people didn't like. Like when I'm getting excited about Ronald Acuna hitting a grand slam against Walker Buehler, people didn't like that. So
Right.
I mean, kind of a no-win situation where if the Braves do well, the Dodgers fans are upset that I'm getting excited for the Braves, and if the Dodgers do well, Braves fans are mad that the Dodger guy is calling their series. but you can't get too caught up in that whole thing. And it really was not difficult, just a little cumbersome, a little awkward.
You had I don't know if this happens a lot in, sports broadcasting and especially in, the playoffs on national television this year. I talked about it briefly with you a while ago. You said, or Joe Buck, who was calling the Yankees Astros series for one of the games, was doing Thursday Night Football, and you had to go in for one of the games. What was that preparation like? Did you know a couple days in advance, or did you know like the night before and hop on a flight to the Bronx?
I knew about a month before.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was good. That was good. That was difficult, though, because you really had to. I mean, I had to go in that chair, and that was for game 5, right? And I had to get there and act like I had to fake like I had been there the whole time, been there for every pitch and lived every pitch. I couldn't just pick up this game in a vacuum and call it. I had to follow it very closely. And so I basically prepped for every single game throughout the series as if I was doing that game, because I think that's the only way to show up in the middle of a series and own it and act like you know all the storylines, you've lived the storylines. So that was a really difficult thing, but a gratifying thing to be able to do, and a pinch me moment for sure to be able to call a league championship series game at Yankee Stadium, no less.
What you talked a little bit about the preparation for, you had a month in advance, but for any series that you're about to call, what's the preparation like? Like, say the Dodgers are playing the Diamondbacks at home and their next series is the Padres. What's the preparation like?
Totally different for the national stuff versus Dodger stuff. So for the example you gave, I have more stuff on the teams in the Dodgers division. That's where the most of my prep goes into, just because the Dodgers are going to play them 20 times a year versus 6 for the other teams. I each year will update. I have pages for each player on my computer on every team, and I'll update those and freshen those up. And I drop links in there when I don't have time to read them and take notes down, that I'll have the link handy and can come back to later. But I do look ahead. So, your example, I think you said they're playing the Diamondbacks, getting ready to play the Padres. Well, while the Diamondback series is going on, I'm looking ahead to the Padres, seeing what their guys have been doing, reading stories about their team, while also getting ready for that night's game against Arizona and reading updated links on everything going on with them. So it's kind of ever evolving, but part of being with a team is that you live it, and part of your prep is just living it every day, being there every day and experiencing the season as it kind of goes along.
What now? That's on like the baseball side. You also, I watch a lot of college football, and I think it was only last year I realized that you had been calling college football. How long has that been? What's that journey been like for football?
Much longer than baseball. So I started calling college football at ESPN in 2012. I didn't call Major League Baseball until 14. Um, it's prep wise, it's a beast, because you have 44 players if you're looking at a 2 deep on each team that you got to get to know. And as with any national game, you're parachuting in and doing those 2 teams and leaving. And so you have a week to kind of become an expert on those 2 teams. And you've got fans across the country who treat their fandom like it's their job and know a ton, right? They know a ton about their teams. They know everything about their teams. So you have to, in a week span, learn about those 2 teams enough where you can teach those people that treat being a fan of their team like it's their job. You've got to know it to that level. So it's completely different thing, both in prep and then obviously in the way you call the game. But I love both, and basketball too. I kind of say that football and baseball are my or are both number one, depending on which one I'm doing in a given moment, 1A and 1B, and then basketball falls in just beyond that.
With this is kind of the performer side in me. What are the goosebumps like? Is there any nerve, or is it just routine now? But like before you call a game.
Yeah, there's definitely some nervous energy. I think with each game there is, even when it's one of 162 Dodger games, there's some nervous energy before the light goes on. I think with you mentioned as a performer, just the rush of live entertainment, and there is no backspace button. And TV kind of is live entertainment. You got one shot. Not the end of the world if you screw something up, but you have one shot to nail it. And so I think that the inherent adrenaline that comes with that is always there.
You probably can't. You've called, hundreds of Dodger games by now. What is for baseball at least? What has been that postseason game that you had just a blast calling?
Postseason game. I've not called outside of that Braves series that you mentioned. Not called any Dodger postseason games because there is no local TV on the postseason.
Hmm.
Um, Probably the LCS game you mentioned, the Yankees Astros one where I filled in for Joe this past season. Just you know that stage of the postseason, it was something that I've always dreamt of doing. And doing the postseason period is something I've always dreamt of doing, and I don't think you can beat it. So getting to do a league championship series game at Yankee Stadium would probably be the highlight.
What about college football?
A lot of them. There are. I mean, there are some that are bigger than others that I may not pick as my favorite. Um, there was my first year at Fox, two really good games. Bedlam, Oklahoma State, and I've done that several times. But my first year was an especially good game. Tyreek Hill returned a punt 95 yards for a touchdown with a minute to go to send it into OT. And neither team was very good that year, but it was an amazing game. And then USC, Arizona State, that same season at the Coliseum, Arizona State won on a Hail Mary. And
Yep.
my dad is always with me in the booth because he's my spotter. So he was there. My brother graduated from USC Film School. He was in school at the time. So he was at the game. It was his birthday. And because it was his birthday, my mom flew out for it as well. So she was in the booth too. So it was my entire family minus my sister in the booth for a game that would have made it special alone. But then you add in the Hail Mary finish. That's a special one for me too.
That's awesome. Wow. You mentioned in a thought a little bit about spotter. This year was my first real year like doing high school football, and I sometimes use a spotter. But especially at a big stage, how crucial is a spotter when it comes to calling any football?
Yeah, it's huge because it's we talked about 44 guys you got to learn on each team. Um, Identification is everything. If you can't ID quickly, you can't be any good at play-by-play. I handled the offensive stuff because there's not time to get it from a spotter who caught the ball, who's carrying the ball. There's not time for that for me to look and see who's doing it and to still be smooth. My spotter handles the defensive stuff. Who's in on the tackles?
Mm.
Who's in on the pass breakup? Who hurried the passer? Things like that. If there are penalties, he'll identify that. But you need somebody who, number one, is quick, but number two, he's got to be consistently right so you can trust him. So when you see his finger point to a name, you pull the trigger without hesitation, knowing that it's the right one. And when you have that, which I do with my dad, it can really boost you, or vice versa. If you don't have it, it can make it difficult.
What's it like? So you have as your color commentator Oral Hershiser for the Dodgers, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What is that role? Because you have a legendary baseball player sitting next to you in the booth, getting insight after a play happens. What is that whole process like of having a color commentator, and let alone having it be Oral Hershiser?
Yeah, well, on TV, the color commentator is the star because you don't need the play-by-play person to describe everything that's happening because you can see it. So we're there more for captioning the moment and teeing up the analyst and allowing them to kind of shine and to color what we're seeing. And Oral is the best there is, and we're best buddies. So it's a pretty special thing working together with him.
That's awesome. With that being said, what are some tips you can give to aspiring broadcasters? I'm starting to get into it this year. I've only done mainly public address announcing. What are some tips you can give to people aspiring to go in this field?
Got to go do it. You got to get reps. They are everything. No rep is too small. It doesn't matter if nobody's listening. If it's just you turning the sound down on the TV or sitting up in the nosebleeds, calling it into your phone, no rep is too small. Be creatively aggressive, finding opportunities, creating opportunities for yourself because it is such an awesome gig. There are a lot of people that want to do it, which means it's really competitive. And so you can get into college and say, yeah, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and that'll set me up fine. Well, no, everybody's doing this, this, and this. What else can you do to set yourself apart in what's going to be a very competitive job market? But if you can set yourself apart by doing as much as possible before the pressure's on to get a real job, then you've got a chance to have a pretty good career in what is an incredible field to be in.
And with that, obviously making a reel is crucial. What are some tips you can give on making a reel?
Put your best stuff up front. If you can, if you have enough stuff, tailor it to the job you're applying for. If it's a baseball job and you have enough good baseball stuff, you make it baseball only. And don't make mistakes on there. There's not, don't make editing mistakes. Preferably don't make mistakes in the clips you're sending. If it's all you got, then okay. But on the stuff we can control, both on the reel and the resume and the cover letter, we've got to control it 100%. You've got to nail the basics to give yourself a chance, for the same reason that I just talked about, doing as much as you can to help in the job market. If I'm one of 150 people applying for a job and there's a little mistake on the reel or on the resume, that's a good excuse for the hiring person to toss it out. And now I only have 149 on the stack. They're going to be looking for ways to sift through all these applicants and all the people that they have as options to give opportunities to. So you need to nail it. You need to be perfect. Not necessarily like the perfect half inning or the perfect call, but perfect as in no ugly mistakes on there.
With that, kind of segueing into the next topic, I want to obviously hear some insight about the Dodgers. I don't know the plan for this upcoming season, but if you guys, relocate or do it at any spring training facility, how are you? Because you would travel with the team. How are you preparing for that possibility of maybe going back amidst this craziness happening?
Yeah, so I think the spring training plan is out. That's not going to happen. I think that if there's a season, it's going to be at big league parks, empty, but at big league parks. I don't think that we'll travel. I think that if there are, the season gets going, road games will be done remotely. So we would call those from a studio in El Segundo, or from our booth at Dodger Stadium, just looking off monitors. So the traveling parties are going to be as small as possible to keep it as safe as possible. It'd be funky, but at this point, whatever we can get, whatever we got to do to get this thing going, I think everybody's on board for it.
So me being a Red Sox fan, and obviously Mookie being traded to the Dodgers because a year before his contract ended because we didn't want to lose him in free agency. Do you think that Mookie will be a Dodger past this season?
I think the Dodgers would like for him to be. There are only so many teams that are going to be able to offer him the kind of contract that he will want and the kind of contract that he deserves. And the Dodgers are going to be one of those teams. So I think that everybody's bummed that this season looks the way it is for that reason as well. That they were really excited about selling Mookie Betts on the atmosphere of Dodger Stadium and saying, look, man, this can be your home for the next 10 years. You can finish your career in this wonderful place. You're not going to have all the fans in there to convince him of that atmosphere. But I think that, yeah, they would not have made that trade if they didn't hope to make him a Dodger long term.
Being around, obviously, I root for the Dodgers when it comes to like this year when the Red Sox went in. I root for the Dodgers because why not? But for the past 3 years, the Dodgers just have made it, but they haven't finished. You kind of, when you travel and you call throughout the season, you become a little bit of a fan, I would assume. So what is that reaction like? Oh, they lost game 5 to the Nats. Like, come on, Joe Kelly. Like, what is that like as a fan announcer?
Yeah, I think that it's more than becoming a fan. Like, we're a fan of the game and we want the team to win, but you become a fan of the people that you get to know. And so it's not, come on, Joe Kelly. It's, I'm so bummed for a great guy, Joe Kelly. I'm so bummed for Clayton Kershaw not having an opportunity to get that ring that everybody knows he deserves. But you have to be able to also keep a distance and keep that at arm's length, because when I'm calling games, you need to be able to do it objectively and not let your relationships color the way you're calling it. So it's definitely a balance.
Absolutely. What are so with do you have to go to a broadcaster, school like with a really strong media program in order to get out there, or is it just a matter of I was gonna ask this earlier, but like, or is it just a matter of getting the reps in?
Well, I went to Beloit College, which is not a broadcasting school at all. So that, I guess that answers your question. I mean, you can go to a broadcast powerhouse, and that's great, but you can go to a place that's not and kind of have the monopoly on any reps that are there. And I think that there is no one right way. There is no one correct path to get to the top of the industry. But um, I would recommend to anybody to go the route I went. I wouldn't change a thing. Going to a small school where it's not necessarily a broadcasting school, but it's a place where there are a lot of people that are going to help you come up with opportunities, and anything you want to do, you're going to find people that can help you do it and then make it happen. So no, you absolutely don't have to go to a broadcasting school. What is going to be valuable is not what happens in a classroom. It's what is going to happen outside of it.
No, absolutely. That's something, especially, just graduating this year, making that decision. I needed to hear that from someone as yourself, so I appreciate that. Um, I also hear that you cook you do some barbecuing at your house. You and your family do it? Are you and your family doing okay through all this troubling time, all these troubling times?
Yeah, we. I mean, I mentioned earlier. I'm kind of boring. It's family and work, and now that we don't have work, it's family and family and family and a lot of food out back. And that's something that we always do. We just never have too much time for it. So doing a lot more of it right now.
Right, absolutely. Well, uh, any parting thoughts? I started this podcast probably about a month ago. We're growing it. I want to have any opportunity, any platform. I think it's a good platform to start is to kind of take into college a little project through quarantine. But are there any parting thoughts or any statements you want to just share?
No, I think it's great what you're doing, and that goes back to what we talked about, getting reps, and no opportunity is too small. The fact that you've taken the initiative to do this is huge and says a lot about you. And any chance you can get to get behind a microphone and to get yourself repetitions are key, especially at a time like this, right, where the world's kind of shut down. How can you find a way to each day make yourself a little bit better? And it's awesome to see you have found a way.
For sure, I appreciate that. Well, best of luck in the upcoming season. I'm happy that you guys as cool would have been for you guys to travel with the team. I'm happy that you guys are finding ways to still call games safely. But I'm sending love to you and your family. And once again, thank you so much for coming on. And we'll see you on my TV screen once the Dodgers games start going.
I hope so, Logan. Great to talk to you, man.
Great talking to you. You have a good day.
You too, bud.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you like what you're hearing, please tune in every Wednesday and every Thursday for all of our episodes on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. Feel free to like and subscribe to us on YouTube, and also to give us a rating and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you every week on Wednesday and Thursday. We got some exciting guests coming up. But right here at Campfire Series Podcast, this is Logan Sofranco signing off.